Hey everybody, how are you?
I like that music.
Oh, apparently the music's gonna keep playing. So
why not? Happy Hump Day, y'all.
How are you guys? It is very, very good to see you.
Why not?
Oh, we're getting an echo. Yay.
So very, very good to see you. So Spencer had to run and get something, and that means that I was touching the computer. Sounds really bad. But there's no telling what I've messed up. So hopefully it won't be anything major.
Yes. So let me close this. Sorry, guys. Please, technical difficulties. We apologize.
Yes. So I'm Sarah Whelan.
I'm Spencer Whelan.
And what we are doing is we are taking the next, I don't know how many nights are left, but over 19 nights.
12 nights, and 12 including tonight.
12 including tonight?
Yes.
Oh, I kind of wish I just didn't know the number. No. So we're going through the Texas Whiskey Trail, and we are going alphabetically and trying to taste everything. And I am trying to, along the way, develop my nosing and tasting abilities.
Yes.
I'm rather a novice. So my rule for myself, I'm sure most of you guys have watched this, so I'm not going to go into super deep detail, but I need to say just not qualitative things. Oh, y'all, we are in trouble tonight. This is just, oh man, sorry. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. No, but I'm trying to stick to like the notes and the different elements that I can try to pick out, and not whether or not I like it or I don't like it, which is always
that's always your metric.
Fallback.
Right.
And so I'm trying to really push and do something different. So
yeah.
Here we
go. I apologize for being a little bit late and disheveled, but it's been a very busy day, and we got here and we got all the whiskey ready and set up, and we have some very, very special guests tonight that we're really, really honored to have on the podcast, and really honored to just know as people more than anything. So I want to go ahead and introduce Jonathan and Marcia Likarish and Robert Likarish, the whole Likarish family.
Thanks for inviting us.
How are you guys?
Great.
So
doing good.
If I'm right here, you guys are in the distillery, or you have a background, one or the other. But I think
green screen.
Yeah, we're just finishing up
behind you in his office, right?
Right.
Nice. Well, how are you guys doing this evening?
Great. We've been busy times here at the distillery.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So before we get too deep into the whiskey, which we do want to do, and we want to spend most of our time doing that tonight, because that's what we are trying to do for the folks here at home, is take a tour through the trail and taste through the trail. But the reason that we are all at home is because of this COVID-19 outbreak, and North Texas has been hit particularly hard, and the resource and the supply chain has been hit particularly hard all across the board. So you guys sprang to action, and as did a lot of other distillers in the state. So I don't know if you want to start, Jonathan, and then you can switch between you and Robert. But tell us a little bit about what you guys did and what you're continuing to do on the Still Strong efforts that we're working on.
Okay. So we were approached kind of out of the blue by a local hospital, and they told us, they said, hey, we are running out of hand sanitizer fast. And they said, can you make us some hand sanitizer? And at the time, basically the regulations were still getting sorted out. So we told them, hey, we're going to look into this, see what we can do. They said, well, can you do it for us in about 48 hours? And at that point, I was like, I don't even know if we can get the other parts in 48 hours. And they said, well, if you can get us just the alcohol, then our compounding pharmacist has the other components. They can put it together at the hospital according to what they need. And so we kind of jumped in and said, yeah, well, we can do that. So that next day, we actually started taking some stuff that was supposed to be bourbon for us and distilling it up to a higher proof in order to make that for the hospital.
Nice. And that was just the hospital right down the street from you, right? About 4 or 5 minutes down the road.
A couple exits down.
Yeah. And so what have you done since then? Have you guys continued to work for that same hospital, or have you been reached out by other folks, I assume?
We're up to 3 or 4 hospitals now that we've provided some to. We do a lot of emergency services, everything from fire, EMS, police departments, pharmacies,
home health,
yeah,
oncology. We've even, we're clear up north, right? Almost in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma doesn't have nearly the distilleries and the access to it, and we're much more in a rural area. So we've had a number of the like the volunteer fire departments from Oklahoma have absolutely nothing, and this is what supports our local communities. So we really are grassroots up when you get this far, but everybody is pitched in, and it's, the model's working well up here for us, and I'm sure they wish there was a lot more, but it's going good.
Well, good. One thing I want to chat about with both of you and Robert, feel free to step in here, because you are the secretary of the Texas Whiskey Association, and that means I send you all my notes, right? Pretty much. Or too many notes every day, including today. But I do want to talk a little bit about what this means for you as craft distillers, because when you guys are producing this high proof alcohol, you're having to pay a pretty hefty tax on it, or at least unless you do something called denaturing, you're going to have to pay a pretty hefty tax on that just because you want to help your local community, correct?
Yeah, that's whenever we're using these high proof to make a sanitizer and you're not denaturing it, we're still having to pay all the excise tax and everything that we would normally. So for us, that does put us at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, and I think like at that high proof, you're looking at somewhere around $5 a gallon or something like that, which is crazy if you think that gas is $1.50 a gallon now, and you guys are going to have to pay $5 a gallon for excise taxes to save people's
lives.
Sanitizer, or save them with protective sanitizer. So that's something that we've been working on for a while, but we want to thank you all for what you guys are doing and the commitment that you're giving to your local community for that.
They don't even have the ability to purchase the high proof. So at this point, everything we've done becomes a donation from the distillery, even all the high proof, not just the taxes.
Yeah.
See, that's
incredible.
It's incredible the way what you guys are doing, and we hope that everybody in the comments and everybody who watches this later can continue to kind of support the efforts that you guys are doing.
Yeah. Before
we get too deep into talking about the whiskey, let's talk about how people can support you right now. What can they do to buy bottles? Where can they find them? Can they buy merchandise from you? What can they do? I'll let any of you take that question.
Go ahead, Rob.
Right now, you can actually go, if you want to support us, onto our website. We have a little shop where you can buy bottles to pick up at the distillery, or get shirts, hats, glasses. I think we just took the chocolates down. There's this wonderful chocolate place in Fredericksburg that makes chocolates for us, but it's starting to get a little too hot to be able to ship chocolates, especially across country. So I don't want people to end up with melty chocolates.
Yeah, especially since it was like 94, 95 today.
It was awful. Oh, it made me so cranky.
So hopefully that kills COVID, but
yes,
it also killed the chocolates for a little while. Yeah. So why don't you guys talk about something that happened it feels like a year ago at this point, but you guys just won a major award. Jonathan, Marcia, why don't you talk about what you guys just won?
Go ahead.
All right. So we recently were, not super recently, we were in New York and for the Whisky Magazine's awards. And so we ended up taking home World's Best for our bourbon this year, which was totally unexpected for us, completely exciting. It's been a madhouse here ever since. You throw all the hand sanitizer stuff on top of that, and it's been basically crazy around here.
So you guys have, and I'm holding it up here, this is the current reigning world's best bourbon, correct?
Unbelievable, isn't it? And It's not from Kentucky.
I know. So is this the first time? Is this the first time that a non-Kentucky bourbon
Oh, that's a good question.
has won this award?
I think it comes down to more of a technicality on that. So
Okay.
there's some places where they've gotten stuff from Kentucky and then kind of altered it, made it their own product, and put it out. But as far as juice that had come from an actual facility outside of Kentucky originally, to our knowledge, yes.
Okay. Well, it's definitely the first best bourbon in the world from Texas. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Only the first of many to come, right?
Absolutely.
That's exactly right.
Cheers to that.
So we will be tasting through that a little bit later tonight. But you guys had to stop production on this so that you could do the sanitizer. So it's even compounded for you right now to fulfill that demand that all of a sudden rushed into you, and then you had to switch all your production over, right?
Right. Well, and the good news is that the whiskey is getting close to. They were releasing about 3 years old.
Yeah.
So we're not really depending on what we're distilling off this week. Kind of stealing away for hand sanitizer. So that stuff's been in the barrels for a while now. So
Of course.
It does kind of put a crunch on man hours as far as the in order for us to run stuff up that high of proof. It takes a long time on our stills. Most of our stills aren't made to kind of run it at that higher proof all the time. So we have one still that can do it, but it's still about an 18-hour run for us when we do the hand sanitizer run. So between that and splitting that with blending time and just pumping stuff out of barrels, filtering things, bottling, it gets pretty taxing, especially since now we're down to 3 people on staff right now. So.
Oh my gosh.
That's insane. Yeah, I was thinking actually, I know you all get to the distillery like crazy early, Marcia, isn't it? Like usually 4 a.m. So I feel kind of bad that you guys are doing this so late. So thank you so much.
Well, that's okay. We're kind of used to it. You know, it's we balance things out. It's some days a little bit earlier, and some days I think we're going to be 7 o'clock tomorrow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Party, you can go home.
Yeah, exactly. House party.
Yeah.
They always say we can sleep next year, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I know. I remember at the beginning of this, I thought, okay, I'm going to paint. I'm going to clean up closets. No, none of that.
None of that has happened.
No, I don't know that it's going to.
No,
I think I just give up.
it's been homeschool
Yes.
and FDA calls and
That's right. Yeah.
all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Well, look, guys, thank you again so much for what you guys are doing, so much for who you are as people. We can't thank you enough for that. But we want to get into the whiskey, and we want to start talking whiskey.
Yes.
So we have 3 expressions tonight that we want to go through. So if you're in the chat right now, get your Hubris out, get your Harbinger out, and get your Icarus. If you can get your hands on those 3 bottles, like I was able to do literally 10 seconds before the live stream started, then that's what we're going to be tasting through. And from Sarah's perspective, they're blind to her now because I've been mixing them.
And he said before we got on, he said, okay, here's the order we're going to do. And I was like, wait a second, you just told me. But guess what? I don't remember what you said.
Yep.
So even if you hadn't switched it out, it's still blind.
So before Sarah gets into them, or while she's getting into them, why don't you describe what Hubris is, what it won? Obviously, we just talked about Harbinger, and then what Icarus is, and then we can kind of go through tasting notes individually and see if she can just like identify them just based on your description.
Yes.
Who wants to go?
You can go.
Rob can do it.
Oh, geez. Okay. All right.
All right. You're up, Rob.
Pressure's on. All right. Well, let's start out with Harbinger. So Harbinger is going to be a blend of our 4 core mash bills. It's going to focus a lot on our purple corn and bloody butcher corn, but does include some barrels that have a low rye mash bill and a flint corn mash bill. So as far as flavor profile on this particular whiskey, I believe Jonathan likes to refer to it as brunch. Because it's going to have a lot of kind of molasses, a lot of cinnamon, clove, a lot of those kind of breakfasty type notes there. Also tends to have a little bit of either an orange marmalade or at least an orange citrus characteristic that's nice, kind of rounds it out, helps it kind of balance out some of that overall sweetness of it. So that's Harbinger. It's at 115. So again, you guys we're rolling with all of three of the higher proof whiskeys tonight. So
yes.
Next up would be Hubris. And so Hubris is our first whiskey that started winning, getting us well known. It's won Best Corn Whiskey from San Francisco World Spirits Competition, and it's also won Best Corn Whiskey twice now from the World Whiskey Awards. So Hubris is just our purple corn mash bill, aged exclusively in ex-bourbon European oak barrels. So you're going to get a lot of that cinnamon and clove. They're going to be in it. Again, it's going to be a little bit, even though it is in a used cask versus a brand new barrel, because it's in a European oak, it tends to be a little bit darker. The wood is going to be a little bit more present than usually for me, than even what I find on Harbinger typically. But it's got a lot of nice sweetness, but it's really balanced out by those baking spices, which were very pronounced in that particular whiskey. The very last one we're going to talk about tonight is the craziest one of the three. That is Icarus. It's kind of the older brother of Hubris. So we actually take the Hubris whiskey, corn whiskey, and some of our other corn whiskeys, and we will actually additionally age those or finish those in barrels from Islay. So they're going to have their peated malt cask. So you're going to have a lot of that peat note's going to show up, especially on the finish of that whiskey. And then we also are going to finish it in a port cask. So it actually gets divided up into kind of two sections. Part of it will go into the peated barrels, and part of it will go into port casks, and then we'll blend it back together. So this one's kind of a little bit of a roller coaster, where on the nose, you're definitely going to get a lot more of those kind of port, a lot of those dates, a lot of the a lot of fruit kind of on the nose that's coming in from that wine influence from the port cask. From there, once that's what you're going to get very first on your palate, then it's going to roll into kind of that corn whiskey again, kind of the richness of that corn whiskey. And then it's going to finish out as you breathe out, you're going to start getting that peat, and that smoke's going to come in the very end of it. So that one should be probably the most present of the three, or the easiest to identify of the three.
I'm going to feel really dumb if I don't get it after that amazing description of all this. Okay. So here's my guess.
Okay.
Ready? Okay. I think Hubris, Icarus, Harbinger.
No.
Ah! What about those two? Did I get at least one of them right?
No.
Oh, I didn't get any of them right. Well, shoot.
Did you try some? Did you try some of
You got to taste it. You got to taste them to be able to.
You just go nose only?
I took a sip of that one, but I haven't sipped the other ones yet.
Okay, you need to try to sip the other ones because I think as as Patrick can attest, Icarus is crazy, but it's amazing. But a lot of that does appear on the back end after the smoke specifically. I think appears more on the back end.
So this is an Icarus?
No, it's not.
Okay. Well, you all keep talking.
Well, what notes are you getting from that makes you think that it is Icarus? So, like, what kind of experience are you getting that makes you think that it has that smoke the way you described it? I feel like maybe I'm getting a little bit of a smoke on the back end. Okay.
So and I got it I felt like I got it the most smelling this one, but.
When you talk about the smoke with it, Sarah, you've been doing a lot of different whiskeys in Texas, and we talk about the smoke. And sometimes it's a little bit comes from the char of the barrel. This one actually comes from the peat because it is an Islay peat cask. Gotcha. So it's going to be a little bit more of what you would see in the scotches with the peat, as far as when we're discussing the smoke with it.
So you're not going to be looking for wood smoke. You're going to be looking more for a brine and kind of ocean, and again, it's going to be a very different type of smoke than like a wood smoke.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I found Icarus.
She found Icarus.
But it's soft, isn't it? On the back, it's just so soft.
It's funny because when I smelled the Icarus was the third one that I smelled.
Yeah.
And on the nose initially I got the brunch. Like I was anticipating that, and I felt like I got that the most on the third one. But
I think, and I think that's what's interesting too. I mean, one, we are dealing with really high proof expressions that you have here, so you're going to get a lot of that aroma in a very intense aroma. it might help to keep your mouth open a little bit more to let that kind of vapor go through so that you're not, not burning yourself out. And then by the time you got to the third, I can see why that would seem like covered up on the nose. But the thing I love, guys, the thing I love about Icarus, Icarus is my own kind of personal, like, I'm a Lagavulin guy, right? Mm-hmm. So like that's what brought me into whiskey in the first place was Lagavulin 16. So when I had this, I was like, oh my gosh, it's everything I love about Texas whiskeys, everything I love about Scotch. And then it's got that port in there that's just kind of that amazing red fruit note that just kind of permeates. And it is one of the most complex but not confusing whiskeys that I've ever had. Does that make sense?
Oh, thank you.
It's a compliment. Thank you.
Okay, I think I know now.
Okay.
This is Hubris and that's Harbinger.
Let me check, make sure. I actually think you mixed them up.
Well, I said this was Hubris initially.
This is Harbinger and that is Hubris.
You
just now mixed them up. Yep.
So this one's Hubris.
That's Hubris. That is Harbinger.
This is Harbinger.
That is Harbinger that you're having right now. That is the best bourbon in the world, Sarah.
Well, I'm not supposed to say whether I like it or not. Although I broke that rule. I
can say that all day. I like all of these and I love them amazingly.
I've broken that rule. I think like I should probably just give up on trying to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do really like this.
Yeah. So guys, talk a little bit, if you don't mind. I know that the people in these comments, and I think we have over 50 people watching now. So I know the people in these comments know this because they're all whiskey nerds. For the most part, but like, could you explain corn whiskey versus bourbon for somebody who may not know the difference?
Yeah. So a lot of people get confused with it because of the way the percentages work. So where bourbon has to be at least 51% corn, put into a brand new charred oak container. Corn whiskey is different, not just in the percentage, but in the cooperage as well. So corn whiskey has to have 80%. But a majority of our bourbon mash bills are 100% corn.
Right.
So that's not really what differentiates it. So what really differentiates it is the cooperage. So if you put it into a used charred barrel as opposed to a brand new charred barrel, you made corn whiskey as long as that corn is over at that 80% mark.
Gotcha.
That's right. I don't know if you guys saw this in the comments, but how's this year's version of Icarus comparing to last year's version? I think you might have answered that in the comments, but I want to bring that up for everybody to answer live.
They must have been with Jonathan today at the distillery.
It's slightly unfinished right now. I was blending it today.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I said, in my opinion, it's overall just the components are a little bit richer than I think they were last year. So that's my expectation of the final blend is a similar profile, but just a little bit darker and richer this year.
Nice.
So. Of these three, which one was the first one you guys put out?
Harbinger.
That's where the name comes from. Harbinger. It was our foreshadowing of things to come. So Jonathan, who loves to name everything, that was why he came up with the name Harbinger. But the name Hubris came about because we were tasting through barrels, and the original Hubris actually was a single barrel, and everybody loved the Hubris barrel. So Robert is our biggest cheerleader most of the time, and he says, "This is so wonderful. I want to send it off to
Sarah got a right dance.
San Francisco. I want to see if we're on the right track." So he decides, Jonathan looks at him and he says, "Robert, that would be very hubris of you to do so, because this whiskey is 16 months old." And so Robert, they did not require a label to be certified. So Robert prints one off on his printer, cuts it out, glues it on a bottle, and ships it off to San Francisco. And so when it comes back, it won the double gold best in class from San Francisco in 2017. And so they decided to send it off to New York, and it got gold there, and it went off, and then they sent it off to the World Whiskey Awards. And so they said Hubris lived up to its name, but you know what? They never put the picture out of it with everything because it looked like somebody made it at home.
Are you saying my cutting skills are not up to par? How dare you, man?
You're left-handed. What can I say?
I have a cutting
Robert,
deficiency.
you're left-handed?
I am.
I am too.
And I am a very poor scissor user.
Oh. Yeah, no, I gave that up. I do a lot with my anyway.
Give me an X-Acto knife.
Welcome to Left-Handed Talk on YouTube.
So then that grew into the name Icarus because Icarus was the hubris was the base.
Yeah.
And then so the story continued that he got so full of himself he flew a little too close to the sun.
Yeah, got burnt and singed just a little bit.
Yeah. And so he became
So when you guys do the naming, which I think, like you said, it's mostly Jonathan here. When you're doing the naming, are you trying to stay within the Greek mythology at all times, or?
Kind of. A lot of the words that I tend to like do have that same kind of vibe and connotation to them.
And darkness.
I always like things like with a twinge of kind of darkness to them. So it's, Harbinger normally isn't really a good thing. If you hear the word Harbinger, normally it's followed by Harbinger of death or doom or something off. Hubris, it's prideful, like to a fault. I kind of like the kind of duality of it. So you can kind of have a positive aspect of the word, but also kind of a negative. A lot of those Greek terminology it's kind of a commonplace theme through everything. So I think that's kind of why we're drawn to those particular types of names.
Yeah. And I think it's, sorry, go ahead, Marcia.
Originally, all the clears we started with were had to do with like Texas and local. We did the vodka was the Blue Northern for the weather up here. And then we did our Carpenter's Bluff moonshine because that was the bridge that is in Denison where we had so many stories of everybody going back and forth and their relatives being arrested on Carpenter's Bluff's bridge because of the selling moonshine. And, sometimes it was coming from Oklahoma, sometimes it was coming from Texas. And then we did a tongue in cheek. We called it a Texas drought gin because we released it during the floods.
That's awesome.
So sometimes we just have fun.
Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about Promethean because that's the one of yours that I've traditionally kind of gravitated toward. That's probably what I've had the most and most familiar about. So I know we're not tasting it tonight, but tell folks a little bit about that one.
Oh, that's I love Promethean. Promethean, I always say, takes you to the darker side because where we had the brunch with the Harbingers, when we go to that red flint corn, we're going to the darker fruit. You get a little bit more of the plum, you get a little bit more of the fig. It adds some chocolate, but it's like that Mexican chocolate. It's got that cinnamon, a little spice on the back. And then it has some really nice kind of dark tea and a long finish. We like it. If it needs sometimes a drop of water, it kind of is really nice with it. The sweetness comes out. It is used a lot in cocktails for old fashions. It's also popular with people that are cigar smokers because they like to balance. When you do cigar pairing the same way you do food pairings, you go for opposites a lot of times.
Right.
So that nice spice and you get the sweetness. Yeah. But the other thing that I have to laugh about this is that it's it fits what the bourbon women say that when they've done the research and the blind testing for whiskeys and women, the guys always thought women were going to like the low-proof sweet things, and when they did blind tasting, women like something with a little spice and a little higher proof, and this one's at 103 proof, so it fits the profile.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, I think it's interesting because, she always gravitates towards sweet things in food and desserts. And I mean, obviously, but like you tend to go sweeter.
Yes.
You come from the Pacific Northwest and you put Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce on top of everything.
But that's, I think, more from my mother coming from Kentucky.
It
Southern. in that part of the country, you eat wet barbecue.
Right. So I always thought that if she ever did get into whiskey, that she wouldn't get into the more spicy ryes or anything that had a lot of spice and complexity to it beyond just kind of the sweet bourbon note, again, coming from a Kentucky background. But you love ryes, and you found yourself loving ryes. And what I do love about what you guys have done here is that this isn't a Kentucky bourbon, right? I mean, Harbinger is definitely not a Kentucky bourbon. Yeah. There is some spice. There is complexity to it. There is layers that aren't just the sweet vanilla punch you in the mouth kind of comforting, Kentucky bourbon that everybody's used to. It's going to make you think, and it's going to make you work for it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's great. So we should talk a little bit. Marcia mentioned Bourbon Women.
Yeah. Once you.
So do a little bit of a plug there. It was so fun.
Yes.
We were on our way I was on my way to Symposium last year in August in Louisville, and I'm standing in Dallas, and I look up ahead of me about like 5 people up. I was like, I think that's Marcia. Sure enough, it was. And it was so great. We got to sit together and chat and visit on the way, and we had a great time. It's a really cool organization to be a part of, especially for women in Texas who are interested into spirits and various things. Marcia, are you going to Symposium again this year?
Oh, I hope so. I've got my hotel and my flights already booked. So let's hope that we're going for it.
Yeah, I hope so. I need to get my flights. I've not done that yet. I told Spencer.
Good time. They're probably pretty cheap right now.
Yeah, probably really
cheap. And usually it's not cheap to fly to Kentucky, so we'll have to look into that. But great.
Well, we'll have some more interesting Kentucky stuff on one of our episodes moving forward. So keep subscribing to us if you're on YouTube, and we'll have new information for you there. But I do have a question from the audience here. Just happens to be the president of the association. Jared says, "What's up with Ironroot Single Malt?"
Jonathan, you got to look at the book, Jonathan. What's in the?
Do you think it's in here?
Yeah, I mean, is it in there?
This one? Yeah, I think it's in this one.
Did you do that just for tonight?
What?
No. We stole that many years ago.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Would you guys talk a little bit about that? Because you guys obviously have a great relationship with Balcones historically, but would you talk a little bit about like working together with distillers to learn from each other and figure out the craft in this new industry in Texas?
Yeah. So for those who aren't real familiar with kind of the history of Texas whiskey, we're not generation 1. We're more kind of second generation. So there's a couple of guys that came before us. One of those, of course, was Garrison. One was Balcones. And so Robert, as a youngin, was hanging out down at Balcones, just kind of getting some kind of mentoring down there, starting out well before we had ever really gotten anywhere down the line as far as actually putting in a distillery. And of course, everybody in the industry was really friendly. But there wasn't a whole lot of distilleries for us to visit at the time. And so we ended up working a little more closely with the guys at Balcones. A lot of just kind of conceptual questions on when you're going to start a distillery, what all equipment do we need, things like that. And they were more than willing to help us out. And so we have a kind of a long history with those guys that go well back. I think it was before they even had their 5th anniversary that we were hanging out down there. And so Jared's asking about our single malt. Mm-hmm. We have made a little bit of single malt. So we haven't kind of gone down as far as far as what Balcones doing, where it's become a mainstream product for them. We're not there yet. Part of the problem is, as opposed to having a louder ton on our mash tank, we just have a cereal cooker here. So if I want to actually go make single malt, I have to trade barrels to the local brewers. We'll actually brew it on their system. I'll put it in totes, bring it back here, add the yeast here, and then ferment here. And so it's a little bit more of a process. So because you're working on somebody else's production timeline as well at that point. So there is some single malt that's in the works.
There's another question here from the audience saying, any plans on 100% Texas rye?
Ooh.
So we have laid down some rye, but it is not 100%. But this last year we did lay down a little bit of rye, just playing around, messing around with some different rye varietals and just, just starting to explore the space a little bit. It's another one of those just kind of fun side projects that we do every year. After going through and making it, I do not believe it's going to become a mainstream product for us, just because Jonathan hates the mashing process for rye with a passion.
We waited till the end of the season to do it because I hate it so much that I forget. I guess it's kind of like women when they have a child, they forget how much it hurts. And so the next time around, I'm like, oh no, we could do more rye. I like rye, and then we do it, and I'm like, no, we're never doing this again. So
that's fair.
So, ladies in the comments, please, let us know if that's a fair comparison.
Oh gosh.
Well, I don't know. I've never distilled, so.
Well, I don't know, but it's pretty painful being around him when he has to do it.
Well, you kind of are knocking it out of the park with everything else that,
That's true.
If you don't like making rye, hey,
What
YOLO.
What is the one thing that you guys have made that you just absolutely were like, that was a fail?
So the one thing that we made that we thought was an absolute fail was we made some grappa 4 years ago, and grappa was the funkiest, weirdest thing. Jonathan ended up having to shovel out the still from the leftovers of what was made up the grappa, and it was just weird, and we didn't know what to do with it. So ultimately, we ended up sticking it in some Balcones rumble barrels just because Marcia was like, you need to free up that tank. You need to do something with it. So we stuck it in some rumble barrels that we had previously used for another spirit that we had released. And now 3 or 4 years later, it's actually really, really fun to taste. And
it's still in the rumble barrels.
It's still in the rumble barrels. It's still aging 4 years later.
So what is that? I've never heard of that term.
Why don't you let the distillers explain?
Yeah, so Grappa is a brandy. It's a brandy, but it's made over basically the leftovers from the winemaking process. So generally, they'll take where they press all the skins, or they'll have the stems and stuff, and they'll take it after they've made wine with it, and they'll add water to it and allow it to ferment again, and then they'll press that and distill that. So we had some funky wine that a local producer had made that was really heavy on lees and just had a bunch of stuff still in it. And we distilled it out, and it was not the most fun thing to clean out, shovel out of the still after that, that run. But so it's one of those things, we've never done it again, but it keeps sitting in the warehouse, and it actually turned into something kind of interesting. Yeah. But for the first 3 years of its life, it was never going to see the light of day ever.
Well, I know what I want to try next time we're up there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said that's a rumble barrel for how many years now? 4 years. Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's a long time in Texas.
Yeah, it is. And we rumble barrels for, Jared here in the comments, rumble barrels are some pretty darn good secondary barrels for some whiskeys lately.
I love them. They make some fantastic spirit with ex-rumble casks. I'm very jealous I don't have more ex-rumble casks.
Tell Jared he can send some more our way.
Yeah, anytime he wants to send some up, we'll take them.
Awesome.
What is your favorite project to work on? Because Jonathan, I hear you from a production standpoint, like scraping out the rye and doing things with grappa and stuff like that. That's never fun. But what's your favorite thing to make from a production standpoint? And what's your favorite thing to make from a flavor standpoint?
Probably my favorite thing that we do is on the blending side now. Not that we don't love running the still, but there is some redundancy in running things off the still, because you're kind of doing pretty much the same thing every time. Now, we do like to do a lot of experimental stuff, so we do kind of change it up there, and we get to taste some different things. But it's really more in the blending process where we really get a chance to kind of explore different avenues, try different things. to kind of see what we can do to make that product a little more complex, a little bit better than it was the previous time. We do things to where we try and blend to the same profile, but we try and make it better each time. And so for me, that's the exciting part, is because that's always changing.
Right.
So once we hit a target or at least a target that we're shooting for, we just move the target a little bit further away and then go at it again.
Yeah.
And I guess you probably feel like you're getting enough inventory now of barrels that you have that ability to really play. Yeah.
Well, when we first started out, you had 6 barrels to choose from, and you had
Right.
to pick 5. I don't know if that was so much blending or just kind of picking the odd man out.
Right.
But now it's much more of an exercise in actual blending, setting things up kind of in traditional kind of pyramid scheme as far as your base notes, kind of your middle flavors, and then kind of at the apex, you've got all these kind of spice notes or things you want to accentuate. Which is fun for us. We're starting to see what the whiskey is doing more around the 3-year mark, and it's really exciting for us. So we're developing some really interesting flavors that we hadn't had a chance to play with before.
Yeah.
And so that's been fun this last year. A lot of the warehouse is starting to get older than anything we've ever played with. So.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, are you guys looking into different warehousing outside of your one location?
So we are. We've purchased another building in downtown Denison that we are attempting to rehab into a new barrel warehouse and cocktail lounge and stuff. It's a work in progress, as anybody who works at the distillery knows. It's going to take quite a bit of time before that's ready, just because every time we think we're going to have some time to go work on that other warehouse, something happens and we end up doing a lot more work at the distillery, whether that's bottling. Poor Ashley and Marcia get strapped to the bottling machine for 90% of the time, it seems like these days. So we're not actually getting over to other warehouse to continue to work on it. So hopefully this year will be the year that we actually start getting moving forward a little bit more on that particular project.
Oh, that's cool. So your tasting room then and bar will be over there then once it's ready?
That's the hope. Again, it's all fluid at this point in time. We've got lots of plans and lots of ideas for the new space. We've got, new still coming in that who knows where the heck we're going to put that.
Details.
It's an antique cognac still. It's in 1968.
Wow.
So that is being packaged.
When you say that word antique, you're making me a little nervous there. Especially when you're talking the 60s.
Would you guys mind talking a little bit about where your location is now? Because we've talked to people in our family and from out of state, and we're like, yeah, there's this amazing distillery up in Denison, Texas, just south of the Oklahoma border, and they built it in a showroom for a boat dealership. And they're like, what? None of that makes sense. But when you see the still behind you and the high roof, it all kind of makes sense. So would you talk about how you got that and converted that place into an amazing whiskey distillery?
So we actually looked all over DFW for where we wanted to start the distillery. We were looking for somewhere where it was showing growth in the region. If you're going to kind of settle down roots, you want to make sure that the town isn't going to collapse around you. And there's a lot of growth here on the north side of Dallas. So then the next thing you're looking for when you start talking a distillery, you're going to have some square footage. Yeah. So if you were going to be in the heart of Dallas, that was going to be out of our price range for sure. So we kind of started looking a little bit further out from the kind of the core of the Metroplex there. And then so we kind of settled up here, stone's throw away from Oklahoma. So a lot of the distillers will give us a hard time. They tell us that we're actually Oklahomans, not Texans.
No.
Like I've said before, you guys are the guardians of the night watch on our northern border.
That's right.
So
you wouldn't believe how many Oklahomans try to come down here.
I bet.
I believe it.
Well, they got that 3-point beer up there, and you got really good high proof whiskey down
That's
there.
right.
So why not?
That's right.
This question I knew was going to come up, but I have to ask it. So it's like, hey, can we get Robert to nerd out on Elevage?
Done.
So what is
sure.
Elevage, Robert?
So élevage, so that's a French term that means to raise. And so they talk about it a little bit in the wine industry and also in Cognac, Armagnac, any of the brandy producing regions in France. And so what they're referring to is the process of, again, they talk about a spirit is birthed in the still and then it's raised in the barrel warehouse. So they treat their barrels like children. They're going to guide them through their life and maturation, and it's putting barrels. So typically, the general trajectory for French brandy is going to start out in relatively new barrels, and then as it ages and gets older, it's going to be moved into older and older barrels. So barrels that have had more of the oak extraction already taken out of them, so they're more of just oxidation vessels. Sometimes they're going to be moved into bigger barrels. Sometimes they'll move to different parts of the warehouses, whether they have a wet, what they call shea, which is like a more humid warehouse, or a drier warehouse to encourage the brandies to develop certain flavor profiles. It's all going to be in trying to do what's best for that particular child and that particular barrel. So for us, the way that we kind of interpret that in our ways to help us manage tannin. In Texas, we extract tannin so easily and so quickly that in order to get spirits that are going to be older, that 4, 5, 6, 7 plus years old, it's really going to be about managing tannin. And so for us, with bourbons, you're a little bit more limited in what you can do. So it's not necessarily going to be moving it from newer barrels into older and older barrels. It's going to be either changing proof of the cask, reducing proof while it's in barrel to help encourage it to pull out more sweetness, or moving that barrel from an outer part of the warehouse to an inner, or vice versa, depending on what that particular barrel needs. It's really about going through and tasting all the barrels every 3 to 4 months, taking notes on the flavor profiles they're developing, and really taking that barrel and putting it in a position to make it the best possible whiskey for that particular barrel. So that's kind of the process that we're going through as we're treating each individual barrel. And part of that process, as I talked about, was tasting all the individual barrels. So when we go through to make blends for Harbinger, Promethean, Icarus, we're able to actually know what the individual profiles of every barrels are, so we can, when we put blends together, if a blend is coming out has too much tannin, or it's too sweet or too spicy, we can actually adjust the blend very easily by identifying individual barrels to either add to the blends or take out from the blends. And that's just comes from a function of knowing the barrels. It's also knowing when to pull the barrels. So barrels don't just get better over time as they age. They go through more of a wave pattern where they're developing flavors as those long chain esters are forming. And then those will break down and the barrel will actually lose flavor. So they kind of fall flat, don't have as much flavor during different parts of the month for different parts of the year. And so it's being able to learn the patterns of those individual barrels so that we can actually select those barrels when they're at their best. Or like when we go through and we're tasting through barrels, maybe to select stuff for single barrels, we can know that barrel is normally way better than what it's tasting right now. So we need to not pull it for selection, because we know if we wait 3 weeks or whatever, it's going to be a significantly better barrel here in just a few weeks. And so it's just a lot of different things that go into that term. It's not just reducing proof over time in cask. It's really playing around and treating each individual barrel to get the best possible whiskey you can out of it.
Now, that was an amazing explanation of Elevage.
Yeah.
Very detailed, very perfect. But everybody in the comments, all they could talk about was the fact that you were pixelated and blurry.
No.
Everybody thinks that either they're drunk or your internet is. So
I could be both. We don't know.
It's the internet, folks. I'm sure some of those Oklahoma fiber optics are making their way down.
So
Except he's in McKinney.
Yeah. So for the élevage, is that something you all have a hand in, or just one of you kind of monitors? Because it seems like that's something that you have to like keep good records on and know what you're doing.
It comes from all of us because when we taste the barrels and stuff, we have a lot of discussion on which ones are needing to be proofed down. If we're looking, we also start tracking and knowing which barrels we think we will put into which blends. And then, of course, you have those that you look at and you think, oh, they don't fit anything. So they go to single barrel, which then you decide most likely we're not going to proof down. We let them kind of ride the wave of the heat. And that gives us some interesting single barrels. So I think that there's usually a pretty good consensus as we're going through them. We all taste the barrels together. It's not like one person doing it on their own.
How many barrels can you taste like in one setting before you're just like, I'm toast, I can't really taste well?
We kind of cap it at about 120 in a given day.
120 barrels in a given day?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're different people than us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
don't hire me.
We're not drinking them all.
Yeah, no, you're not. We will actually taste all 120 in that case, but you're not drinking it. You're spitting it back out.
But still, that's a really impressive to me to be able to like maintain the ability to figure out what's different about each one and assess it on its own. So
yeah,
it's life goals.
Life goals
to get to that level.
Yeah,
right?
I mean that's what we experienced when we did the trail blending class with Jared and his team. Is just like how absolutely different human beings you are compared to the rest of the world when it comes to this particular skill set. Like for anybody that thinks that there is an automated process that there is no AI, there is no spectrometer that can match the human nose and palate. And for you guys to do what you do, it is an amazing skill. It's a talent, and it's a talent, but it's also a learned skill, right? And the way you guys are evolving your expressions over time, you can see the progression of the different things that you guys are picking up on that we just, to your point, just say, that's good. And I don't know why it's good, but it's good, Right.
But Sarah, we started all of this, I remember starting at the same point you are, except I was sitting in a room with, Robert and Jonathan had a lot more experience than I did, but we also had Nancy Fraley there. Yeah. And they start in, and when they say, what do you taste? I could have had popcorn in that class and I wouldn't have known what I was tasting. It was overwhelming, but then you just have to step back and you start relating it to what to things that are familiar. And then I think once you know things that are typically found in the bourbons, what you do is you smell them individually. So if you know vanilla's there, get yourself vanilla beans and smell vanilla so that you know what the true, what vanilla is. And when they're talking, I think that the cherry, a lot of times it's not the cherry that's coming off the tree. I think a lot of times it's much more of a cherry that we've had in some other type of food or something. But you just start doing it and then divide it. I think that when you were talking with Garrison's, they were talking about start with what is sweet, and then what is the acidic, what is what are the tannins, and what brings those flavors.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And I think a lot of when I smell whiskey or bourbon initially, it does take me back to being on Nanny's farm in Kentucky. But so much of that experience, you're young and you're not paying attention to, well, what am I smelling? It's just this sensory memory. And it's trying to hone in on that and figure out.
It's difficult. It's really, really difficult.
But I will say, when we announced that we were going to do this thing, and you threw a curveball at me and you were drinking Harbinger and I was drinking Giant Rye, and you're like, here, you switched them around. You're like, smell them, tell the difference. And I totally got it wrong.
Yep.
Super embarrassing, and it made me very, very nervous because I didn't realize it was that bad. And but tonight, like smelling the Harbinger, which it's all
This is
gone.
her Harbinger glass now, by the way.
But now, like after tonight, I'm like, how did I think that was a rye?
Yeah.
And it is. It's the practice. It's the actually doing it, and the repetition of every night is actually, I think, been super helpful because I'm able to remember and compare to like, okay, it kind of smells like that, and I know that was a bourbon, or I know that was a rye, and
I think that there's different levels of. There's no reason why you would need to have the skills that Jonathan or Jared or the blending teams have. You know, I think that it's nice to have an ability to identify and appreciate it.
Yes.
Because I think that if you don't have any experience, it's really hard to appreciate something. So I think what you're doing is great, and you build your appreciation. But, you know, if it's not going to be your job and what you're doing, you go back and do part of that part. You need to just be enjoying yourself and having a good time.
I couldn't agree more. And I am not taking a blending or distilling job anytime soon. Like y'all don't want that.
Nope.
I'll stick to other things. No, but I'm hoping this does encourage other folks who are maybe not into whiskey or they're too intimidated to get into it. You know, I'm pretty good at, you know, just hopping into stuff and faking it until I make it and enjoying myself. And I'm not too worried if I don't know, you know, I'm not the expert in a room.
It's worked well for our marriage. So.
I've done all this last year. No, because it has been enjoyable to go, but I can see how that if you're taking something like this seriously, you want to know and you don't want to go into and like, no, like just come to these events. I went to Bourbon Women, the symposium, and I didn't know what the heck I was talking about other than I knew I liked drinking whiskey.
Yep.
And bourbon, and I was really excited about being able to buy more than 2 bottles at a distillery. That was fun. Yeah. We asked some folks, we're like, how many can we buy? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, wait, I can buy as many as I want? It's like a whole new world.
Yeah,
it was always Southwest that got me on the other end, right?
Right. I know, that was the thing. It was like, oh man.
I get my weight on my suitcase.
Yeah.
Well, I got to put a shout out to our New Zealand buddy here, Jesse.
Oh, I did see it.
He's saying, I don't know, Sarah Rye's kind of elusive for him too. So
okay.
We got folks from New Zealand here. I saw some comments, and I want to kind of make a last call for questions for the Ironroot team.
Yeah.
But one of the questions that I did see in there was that somebody was saying they had such an amazing time at their anniversary parties, which we were at for your
that was so fun.
5th anniversary and ICOR release. What they were asking, what are your future plans for anniversary parties?
Well,
hopefully we'll be open.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll be able to have a party. So this year, again, we haven't really started the full planning for the event yet. Although I will tell you that the new ICOR has already been blended and is continuing to mature. It is to me, what I think is already a step up from what we did last year. It probably, if you wanted to ask me my favorite thing in the warehouse right now, it would be what's going to be the new ICOR.
Nice.
I know, which is pressure's on now. Just building that up right now. But
Way to go, Rob.
Way to go, Rob. Nobody's painting bottles again. I'll tell you that much.
It's fantastic, and it's one of those things. What I love about the anniversary parties, just for us, it's a celebration of not only like everything, still being in existence, still being here, but it's all the hard work that everybody puts in and all the support we've gotten. I mean, from everyone at the distillery, from Ashley, Seth, Marcia, Jonathan, the Galladay down in Austin, to our significant others, my dad, Jessica, Kylie, again, everybody that basically essentially now is, whether they're an actual employee or not, works for the distillery, to the people who are volunteering. I mean, we have so many friends that come up and just help out during those events. And to me, that's the most special part of the entire thing, is it's that coming together of everybody and that support that makes it just
Patrick flies in from Arizona. And
Patrick.
Yeah.
Patrick, of course, at some point I'll probably recruit him to be an Arizona rep. I mean, he's already got a jacket, so.
There you go.
But it's family. I mean, as you said, like Patrick has become part of the family too, and that to me is what makes this thing so special. And just building up that family, and again, it's even extending down to the rest of the kind of the Texas whiskey. You know, like you talked about our relationship with Jared, and the guys at Balcones, to a lot of the other distilleries here in Texas. We're starting to become so much better friends with them, and it's this association has made it brought us a little bit closer together than I think that we've been ever before, which is something that's really special to have those relationships, to be able to call everybody at these different distilleries and be able to celebrate everybody. I think. Again.
And I think that's what, I think all of that comes through in your product. I know that can seem cheesy, and I don't know exactly how that translates, but it does. And I think it's
because they're gingers and they lost their soul. So they have to put it into the bottle.
That's right. That's where it all goes.
You're drinking ginger soul every time.
Well, in that case, no.
I had to get one ginger joke in. Come on. You can't go a whole night.
I feel like we should start calling Robert the Secretary of Whiskey.
Oh, that's a good idea. We need better titles rather than just the typical titles.
Yeah.
So there you go. You
Secretary
are Secretary of Whiskey. Secretary of Texas Whiskey. There you go. There's a couple questions. Man, you guys are asking so many questions that it's hard for me to grab one. But there are a couple questions about, are you guys in Oregon? And if you're not, how could they get you into Oregon?
Again, Oregon's a little bit more of a difficult state to get into. But yeah, if you've got distributors or whatnot, just send me an email, robert@ironrootrepublic.com. And if you got some ideas and ways that we could do it, send it on. Although right now, for the moment, we are a little bit more limited on expansion. As far as Pacific Northwest, Washington State, Total Wines we're in. There's some Total Wines in Northern California as well that we're in. Working on Montana right now, but one of the negative parts about winning these awards is it makes it more difficult for us to expand because we start selling more in all the places we already are. And again, Jonathan is already strapped to the still more than he probably should be at this point. And so
I think that this week we've gotten so many comments as, well, why don't you have more whiskey? And we said, the whiskey was 3 years old. The distillery's 5.5 years old. We were 2 years old. Who would have even thought that in 3 years where you would be,
Right.
You're just trying to still figure things out, right?
Yeah.
We were not planning on being.
Oh, wait a minute.
It's all about trade secrets.
Oh, yeah, we got good trade secrets.
So,
anybody else need them?
This is how we do it. So
This is it.
You got to buy corn,
Buy corn.
make whiskey.
Tight pants.
Beard and profit.
Well, there you
So we're still working on the tight pants. That's where we're missing the profit part, I think, is the equation. But
I'll tell you, that's about as real of a business plan as most Texas distilleries have started with. So, it's not that far off.
You guys are good.
There's some Vito. I got a hat tip to him. He says, "Can Canada get some ginger love? I want to be a rep, or I could be a rep." So we got an international crew here with you guys tonight.
We're working on it, Vito. We're working on it.
can you dye your hair, Vito?
And that's true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you need some recessive genes in your gene pool.
Red roots.
Yeah, somebody was saying, well, you're on the Red River, so it's appropriate,
That's right.
The Ginger River. Yeah.
Yeah, the Ginger River. Well, let's one more time, real quick, tell everybody where they can find your stuff. If you can buy it through a third-party app, especially if there's any kind of delivery, or if you have like Total Wine, or if you're here in Texas, I think you can. Everybody has curbside pickup now, where you can do online ordering and curbside pickup, including at the distillery. I believe you guys are doing that as well, right? We
are doing pickup at the distillery. Yes.
Okay. And where else can people find your stuff and support you, at least throughout this downturn in all activities?
We are doing pickup at the distillery.
Okay. And where else can people find your stuff and support you, at least throughout this downturn in all activities?
So nationwide, we're going to be available in every Total Wine nationwide. So it's about 30 states right now. Online, you can find us through Caskers usually has stuff in stock, as well as Ace Spirits out of Minnesota. They do a lot of shipping to states like Kansas, some of the states we're not already in. In Texas, across the state in Total Wines, and then a lot of independent stores. Again, they've been some of our biggest supporters throughout the years. So little small mom and pops across the state definitely are carrying us. So it just depends on if you got a question. If it's near you, again, send us a message on Facebook and I'll be able to send you something. If you want to come up, visit the distillery, again, grab a bottle online. We always try to have some sort of single barrel or something available as well, something special that you can only get at the distillery. So hopefully we'll be able to keep adding to that and keep spreading the ginger virus, I guess.
Nice.
Oh, no. Oh, I think we better cut him off right now.
What's in that water bottle?
What's in his water bottle? Now we know what the fog was, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to put this up, but I'm wondering if you're going to retract his comment. He's like, "You'll deserve the awards. Great human beings doing fantastic work, except for spreading ginger virus." But no, that is true. We definitely agree with you, Jared.
Yeah.
Love you guys. Love what you're doing. Please, if you're watching this stream live or recorded, please support these folks.
Yes.
Join the Texas Whiskey Trail and come see these guys. You'll be able to, just as an FYI, we're going to start publicizing this more later, but everybody who's a trail member now is going to get 2 free months of trail membership because of this outbreak. And then if you want to become a trail member, you can sign up between now and Memorial Day, and you'll also get an additional 2 months added to your first year. So you get 14 months of membership for 12. So when all of this is said and done, we think everybody should go and visit every distillery on the trail. I want to see completion after completion after completion, making our jobs more hard because we're gonna have to find more completion gifts to give people. But this industry and these people deserve it. So please go and patronize these folks.
Well, and really, like I think the distillery visits are a great post COVID thing, right? Because in general, unless you're going for like an anniversary party or something like that, it's not crazy packed.
Right.
It's easy for you to maintain your space if you're still like, I just want a little bit of space just to make sure. But it's a great outing. And
plus you got like
some good whiskey. I mean, do you really need a reason other than this?
Cask strength whiskey is sometimes is over 60%. So, it's CDC guidelines. So drink
You know what? It's a great group of people throughout the state. And, we're just proud to be part of the Texas Whiskey Trail and have so fortunate to have so many friends and all of the wonderful people in the distilling business. And I think we're all blessed to be a part of this, and we appreciate it. We appreciate everybody who supports us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you guys keep doing what you do. We'll leave on the video that I started out with, so you guys can get a little taste. A lot of this video is from the anniversary party that we attended, and a lot of it's just for fun. So we'll outro on that. You guys stick with us for a little bit, and we'll see all of you online tomorrow night with Lone Elm.
That's right.
Lone Elm.
Just down the road.
All right.
Farther than just down the road.
Yeah, but we're staying in the North Texas region.
That's right.
So. All right, y'all. Take care, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.